And what I mean by that is I've worked at TalkTalk now for 16 years. And if I could very easily become institutionalized and just do what we've always done within this bubble.
Right.
And what I've really done is try to get outside and meet people from other organizations, other walks of life, and then just pick up on the little things that they do and bring them into this organization. Because otherwise you do become stale, and I think it detracts from performance. So I'm a big believer of ditch the CV in many occasions.
Yeah.
Let's look at the behaviors of the individual. Let's look at potential transferable skills.
Yeah.
Let's not just look at have they worked at a FTSE 100 organization for at least 3 years, etc., etc. Because you are massively minimizing the talent pool you can go after. Acquisition to de-risking a decision. Can this person come into our organization and bring something to the party and deliver a good job? That's the main thing. And these people have got so many different skills that probably wouldn't sit on a traditional CV. You talked about parents, women and men that have had kids and come back. You know, some of those parents, when I see them come back into the organization, are the best negotiators they've ever been, because they've had to negotiate with a 3-month-old to take their food or tidy their room or stop crying or give me 5 minutes. They're amazing. And you know, we've got to get better at looking at the inherent skills and the transferable skills than just what's on a CV.
Welcome to HR Live Lounge, where you get to meet with some of the most inspirational human resources leaders and talent acquisition specialists on the planet. And now, here's your host, Roy Ripper.
Today, we're talking about post-COVID leadership with a veteran of human resources for over 25 years, Mr. Ian Turner. Now, Ian is the talent director at TalkTalk Group, the UK's leading provider of value for money connectivity to over 4 million customers. So in this episode, we discuss everything that you need to know about leadership. And I want you to stay tuned to the end, because Ian is going to share with you a strategy that he and his team are using right now that you can implement into your business, into your role, and you can start to use immediately with the people that you lead.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of HR Live Lounge. And I've got a great guest in for you today. His name is Ian Turner. Let's welcome him to the show. Welcome, Ian.
Hi, Roy. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again. Now, look, for everybody, Ian Turner is the talent director at TalkTalk. Ian, for people who don't know you, just give us a brief outline of your experience today and the role that you occupy at TalkTalk. What's brought you to this position?
Without giving my age away too much, I've probably been in HR for about 25, 26 years.
Yep, same.
I guess now, like, my role at TalkTalk, as you said, is talent director, and I'm super aware that, you know, talent director can mean so many different things at different organisations. So here at TalkTalk, really what we do from a talent perspective is anything from talent acquisition, L&D, EDI, succession planning and talent management, etc., and then graduates and apprentices. So it's a real almost like employee life cycle role, which is just superb, because you get to bring in the right people, but then you see them grow through the organisation, and that's the really rewarding bit for me.
Fantastic. And how many employees are we talking about TalkTalk currently?
Around 2,000,
so
predominantly in Salford and what have you, but we've got them across the UK, and then we have outsourced suppliers as well that we work with.
Fantastic. And Ian, just give us a brief outline. How you say you've worked in HR 15 years, you said?
No, it's about 25, 26.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm older.
We're both slightly older than we let on. But what's brought you to this point, you know, sort of positions and companies that you worked with previously?
So I'm probably like quite a few people, really. I kind of fell into HR, really. I was in a contact centre and started training people up, and then got into an HR role whilst I was at Bank of Scotland, that became HBOS. And that was a brilliant learning curve because you start to develop people and then you get involved in the HR world. And it just sparked this kind of fire in me, if you like, that really kind of got to work with people and make a real difference. So I kind of was at HBOS for around 11 years, went to Money Supermarket and a couple of other little places. And then I've been at TalkTalk now for 16 years. So actually 16 years, 3 days ago it was. So that's a long time. Within the career at TalkTalk, I've had sort of 7 different roles within that, ranging from HR manager to an ops manager and through to running a sales academy and then into running the talent function as we go along. So yeah, varied. But that's the great thing about HR, right?
Fantastic. And unlike, I do speak with a number of people who, because of the nature of the function, will move through different companies in their career. But you know, you're what we would call in the industry a sticker. It's like you've worked for, you know, for a long time, but we can see the progression within those companies as well, presumably, you know, and actually that's about good choices, isn't it? It's about choosing companies or having those companies choose you where you can develop your career for a period of time.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I've been really cognizant of is, and I don't always agree with this, by the way, but you see people that have been at a particular organization for so long,
Sure.
and sometimes from a recruitment perspective, they get a perception of that around, you know, they're not really growing, etc. But, you know, I've made sure that even though I've been here 16 years, like I said, I've had 7 different roles within the time here. And each one is a progression, more senior, taking on more responsibility and accountabilities, etc. So, you know, you can still demonstrate growth within an organization. You don't have to always move from company to company to do that. And I think that's important for people to remember as we go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, actually. You mentioned there recruiters. And remember, I've worked in that industry for 35 years. Yeah, I was always kind of like balk when I have to say that. But as a recruiter, and I know fellow exec search recruiters, they do discount people who have been at one company longer than, say, 7 years. We used to refer to it as the 7-year itch or the womb factor, and etc.
Yeah.
As a recruiter, though, what I used to try and do is look at how has that candidate progressed in that company? How have they grown? How have they developed? Because each of those roles is almost equating to somebody moving to other companies to get that role. So
completely agree. Completely agree.
Interesting thing. So look, Ian, let's get into this. I'm really keen to find out. A lot of people have their own personal success quotes, and sometimes those can come from the world of HR. Sometimes those come from, you know, leaders. Sometimes it comes from some really, you know, diverse and interesting sources. What's your success quote? How do you apply that to your work or your life?
So my personal success quote is, curiosity is one of the great secrets of happiness. And I live my life by that. And anyone that I've ever worked with or people who've worked for me, they will always tell you that one of the biggest success traits I see in myself and in other people is people who are curious. And I just think that opens up so many opportunities. It makes life interesting and rewarding. So, you know, I always try and spark curiosity in other people, but equally, you know, make sure that the curiosity burns within me all the time.
I really like that from a personal point of view. It's that thing, isn't it? And you know, I've got 4 kids, and I remember all of them were at that age, generally around 2 or 3, where they kept saying why, and you'd give them the answer, and they go, "But why? But why? But why?" And I remember being frustrated at the time, but thinking now, it's like that curiosity as a child, if you can retain that throughout your life, throughout your career, it really stands as well. And you know, Ian, as well, when I approached this podcast, I started off by saying, and I do now, I freely admit that this is a subject area I don't know anything about, or know very little about, certainly compared to people like you and other guests. But I approach it through curiosity. It's like, look, tell me more about that. How does that work? What are the big challenges? And I'm asking the questions that I suppose people outside your function and outside your industry would naturally ask you. So, I love that quote.
And I think it's, it enables people to get outside their comfort zone. But I also think it helps you be a better recruiter, a better HR leader, a better person, really, because if you don't be curious, how are you going to understand the other person's perspective? How are you going to be able to, do effective stakeholder management, etc.?
Yeah.
So it enables so many things. It enables you to grow, enables you to serve the businesses better.
Yeah.
But I just think it makes life an awful lot more interesting if you're curious. I sit there at home, my wife goes mad because I'll sit there and something will come on TV that I've got no idea about, something I don't know about submarines or something, and I'm Googling. I'm literally Googling, what does that mean? Or what's that acronym that I hear? And it's just that innate, I just want to kind of learn and get hold of it. And I think if we can spark that in people, that's brilliant.
Yeah, Ian, we're brothers from another mother. It's like, if you spoke to my wife, she'd say exactly the same. It's like, he's always looking on the iPad. Here's something, iPad, what does that mean?
Yeah, totally.
I love that success quote. So look, let's, you mentioned there about 2 or 3 organizations that you've spent considerable time working in. I'd imagine during that time, you've had some massive challenges. Can you boil it down to what's the biggest challenge that you faced in your career to date? And I'm really interested to know what the eureka moment was. Challenge, like, oh yeah, and then, action that you would have taken to resolve that challenge.
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple. I was trying to boil it down to one. There was probably a couple, and one will probably resonate to a lot of HR people out there, and that is, you work for either a manager or a leader or a company where I kind of call it there's a spillage in aisle 3 moment. Can you go and mop it up, please, HR? That kind of thing, and that's just not rewarding. It's not great for the business. It's not great for the individuals. And it's just not rewarding. So I had a few like that. I won't go into where it was, but I had a few like that. But again, the eureka moment became that that curiosity that I just mentioned, and I'm like, why is this person like that?
Right.
And why are they leading like that? And instead of just trying to unpick it and literally put the sticking plasters on it, I thought this person's never ever going to learn and become a better leader if I just mop up the spillage in aisle 3 every time they do this. So I really got to understand that individual and what drove them. And I think by understanding that, I got to understand why they became so frustrated. They basically couldn't handle pressure.
Yeah.
And that was sparking this, just do this. And it was almost, it wasn't bullying by any stretch of the imagination, but it was overly direct,
right?
I think. And by understanding that individual, by working with them about their own traits and how they handle pressure, etc., actually changed them as an individual that then was more sustainable. Yeah. So I think for me, the eureka moment there was definitely around understand the root cause. And there's always a root cause, whether that be an HR issue, if it's around, we talked about CVs before in the 7-year itch.
Yeah.
And actually don't just take things on face value, dig a little bit deeper, and that curiosity. And I think that bit really helps. I think if I could just go my second bit, if I dare, one real personal development eureka moment that I had was bring the outside in.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is I've worked at TalkTalk now for 16 years. And if I could very easily become institutionalized and just do what we've always done within this bubble.
Right.
And what I've really done is try to get outside and meet people from other organizations, other walks of life, and then just pick up on the little things that they do and bring them into this organization. Because otherwise you do become stale, and I think it detracts from performance. So a real learning for me was, people call it networking, people call it curiosity, but just go outside of your organization, go to events, go to meetups, listen to podcasts, whatever it is, and bring those little snippets that work for you authentically and bring them into your organization. And that for me has been a real learning as well.
I love that, Ian, because it ties into that success quote of yours. If you're curious, if we kind of accept that we don't know everything and we don't need to, impose that, listen, I'm a leader. It's like, so I know everything. I've got every answer.
Oh,
If we look outside and go, hang on a second, maybe there's a different way that people are doing this. And how is the industry expanding? You know, what can I learn from that? And as you said, bring it back in. I think, and again, that normally happens when we bring new people in, like employees, and we ask them, it's like, look, you worked in this company before. How did you guys do it? And that's the normal way of doing it. But to go outside that comfort zone and seek out other leaders, other people that are doing sterling work, and as you say, networking, finding out what they do, and then I call myself the thief of good ideas because I've always had that curiosity and always been really interested in bringing stuff that works back into the organizations that I work with.
I love the phrase "steal with pride." That's exactly what we do. Most of the times when I see people externally, they're not splitting the atom. This is something really simple that you just go, wow, great, I'll bring that in. So yeah, steal with pride. That's my advice.
I'm going to borrow that one. I'm going to
you can steal it with pride.
Be upfront. In terms of challenges right now, rather than kind of asking you what's going on at TalkTalk, what are the big challenges that you think people at your level, people in talent acquisition, employee development, what do you think those challenges are as an industry, as a function? What are we facing in the world today that people are struggling with, people at your level are struggling with?
There's so many out there, right? There's talent pools and talent shortages. There's the advent of AI and what's that going to do to this industry, and all of these things that probably keep us awake from time to time. But the one that's really close to my heart right now is kind of leadership post-COVID, I call it. And I'm calling it human-centric leadership. And what I'm finding that since COVID, and the hybrid working is amazing. I'm a huge advocate for it. But no, you're in your office at home by the looks of it there. And and a lot of us work from home nowadays. And what I find is that I can sometimes go into my office at home and I'm on there at 7:30 and I don't get up until lunchtime, and then I log off at sort of 6:30 in the evening. I've hardly moved. I've got no daylight. I'm literally just been sat at a screen all day, and that's not healthy. And I see a lot of people nowadays that suffer from burnout. They're suffering from mental illnesses, etc. And it's a real biological thing. So we've been doing a lot of work here with some amazing people, and I'm going to talk about them a bit later on, but there's a company called CHX, where it was actually focusing on the biological needs of you as a human. As human, we're wired in certain ways. We need movement, we need daylight, we need social. And when we remove that, because we're working from home when you're sat in front of a screen all day, then actually that can have an impact on your mental well-being. It can have an impact on your physical well-being. And I see that, and the more people I speak to, they really feel it. And I'm like, why don't you do a simple thing like your one-to-ones? If you're doing them virtually, do them on FaceTime, go for a walk, do walking one-to-ones. And the number of times that people say they connect, they get in the daylight, they get in the exercise, and a 15-20-minute walk just makes them more energized, more the cognitive ability is improved. And I just think, again, it's such simple things, but the way the world is now, everyone's 100 miles an hour, and you literally sit in front of the screen for 10 hours a day, and it's just not good for us. And it impacts the leadership and it impacts performance ultimately. So I think that's a real challenge that I think all of us need to face into. So I think, definitely something for people to go after.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just, as you said, it's like we're locked into our screens, not just the screens that we, look at, work on or whatever. It's our phones. I've tried several times to take what they call a digital diet and not switch my phone on in the morning. But straight away, I wake up, I switch the phone on, I'm into work mode. I then go and sit at my screen and I remain in work mode. I often forget to take lunch.
Yeah.
And before I know it, the day is gone. It's 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and then I go back on my screen again.
Yeah.
I'm doing the
Yeah.
Google searches like you.
Yeah, totally, totally. And and you look at if you've got a smartwatch or a Fitbit or whatever, you look at it, and I looked at one day and I was like, I've done 600 steps. I'm like, that is awful, because I'm literally sat down. And I guess as humans, we're wired to be pack animals. We're wired to be social.
Yeah.
And as great as when we can have a conversation like this,
Yeah.
it's never the same as maybe sitting down and having a coffee or going for a walk with somebody. And ultimately, there's a well-being element to this, and a colleague retention element to this, and a performance element to this. Ultimately, it's about well-being, and if you can encourage your colleagues to go for walk-in team meetings or walk-in one-to-ones, or just talk, sometimes not even about work, and just check in with how people are feeling, is huge. And I think, just on that point, I think feelings are things in the past we've been brought up not to talk about at work. You leave your troubles at the door and you pick them up on the way out. And those days are far gone. People have stuff going on outside of work day in, day out, because we're human.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've done through the programs here with this, even with this going for a walk, is people open up about their feelings. They will open up about what's going on at home. If they've got an ill relative, or they're going through a breakup, or whatever it is that's just life, they're more likely to open up. And if they open up, you can support, they feel better, they feel part of that pack, and that you've got their back and things like that. And again, it just makes the world of work better. They're more likely to stick around, respect you as a leader, they're more likely to perform, etc., etc., etc. And again, it's small things. But they're huge. They make a huge, huge difference.
I really like that. And, and again, from a personal point of view, I do a lot of my work sort of, virtual coaching, virtual training. I'm doing less classroom now. Pandemic probably started that off, but companies that engage with me overseas, it's easier, sort of using technology. But from a personal point of view, I love being outside. I'm not sure how I would do the podcast episodes, only because of a sound issue. It's like mowing, the dog's barking, but who cares? Actually, maybe we should be doing walk and talks rather than doing it. Walk and talks on Zoom, we could do, right? Maybe
I've seen I've had the best conversations with my team.
Yeah.
And people that I support across this organization, just going for a walk.
Yeah.
Just go for a walk. Everything comes out. They talk, you're moving, there's daylight, there's the vitamin D, there's all the stuff. Even if it's chucking it down, you laugh about it. And genuinely, I've had the best conversations, the most productive conversations, just by changing the environment, going for a walk.
We used to talk about getting to the water cooler, right, or the coffee machine in the staff areas. But if I think about that, you do get conversation going on, but people are still guarded. What if I'm saying something that someone else can hear, and all of that? I just think that you've got something with that walk and talk. So I'm going to we should trademark that. I think, unless someone's done it. But I love that initiative. It kind of brings us into my next question for you. You've worked within this field for 25 plus years. And I always think that, in terms of looking forward to the future, we have to look backwards. We have to kind of look at what were the trends, how did things develop? So I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball for a moment. And, what do you see as the challenges for HR leaders, talent acquisition specialists over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? What are they going to face?
Probably two things I would say. So number one, I think, is AI. That's going to completely disrupt everything that we're doing. We're seeing it even from a talent acquisition perspective now. You know, is that CV written by chatbot, chat GPT? You know, is it authentic? Is it real? And that's just the start of these things, right? So I think, you know, AI has the opportunity to disrupt the way that organizations work and the jobs that are out there. So, you know, that's one thing for us to face into. And I think we've got to get curious about it and what that's going to look like. And there'll be times when it works and times when it doesn't. But what that will do is it's going to kind of create this group of people that were doing roles that are no longer maybe required, that need other roles. And this is where I think, from a talent acquisition perspective, there's definitely a piece here around looking at alternative talent pools. If we just keep going after the same people, we create this kind of insular community of people that just move around, and in effect, you drive up cost and salaries, etc.
Right.
And it's really hard, and you want to retain people, and they just keep constantly moving.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I've been really curious over the last couple of years around what are these alternative talent pools, and some of them are really brave. You know, we've looked at things like ex-convicts, and we've gone working with prisons and saying, you know what, actually, again, human side to this, people have made an error of judgment at some point. Have they got great skills that they could utilize in our business? Same things with neurodiverse, same things with, you know, I work in a tech organization. So how do we get into schools with young girls aged 6 and 7 even, and getting them kind of in tune with STEM subjects and getting them curious about what jobs could be available for them in this world? I look at my son, you know, he's a young teenager, constantly on his phone, making TikTok videos and all that kind of stuff that blows my mind.
Yeah.
He could make a career out of that. And I don't mean as a YouTuber or a TikToker, but, you know, just a digital thing and creating videos. He could make a career. But unless we tell them and spark that curiosity and spark that interest in them, then they're probably going to be a blind spot. So again, these, you know, the future talent, these alternative ex-military, ex-convicts, care leavers, all of these things. There are people out there in those talent pools that are flipping amazing. And they probably wouldn't get looked at by just looking at a CV. So I'm a big believer of ditch the CV in many occasions. Let's look at the behaviors of the individual. Let's look at potential transferable skills. Let's not just look at, have they worked at a FTSE 100 organization for at least 3 years, etc., etc. Because you are massively minimizing the talent pool you can go after.
So true. You know something, I've looked at, as you said, these alternative talent pools. One of the key ones that I picked up really early on was often overlooked, often dismissed, and it was parents that had taken time off to work with their kids, predominantly women, that had stepped out of their career in order to bring their kids up, but were then overlooked when the kids were ready to go back to school and, you know, she or he was looking to get back into industry. And these people had so much to give, plus their motivation to work seemed to me to be, you know, to be greater than perhaps the traditional employee that I had. And people were overlooking them, you know, dismissing. She's been out for 3 years, 4 years. She's not up to date. And I just think with more support, with understanding how their life has changed or may have changed, and as you said earlier on, leaders that are, you know, curious, and it's like, okay, what do you need in order for this to work going forward? And another thing occurs to me, I attended a show recently where talent director for Starbucks was talking about an initiative that their CEO had announced a couple of years ago, which was let's get immigrants, people that are new to a country, let's tap into that workforce. And all of a sudden, Starbucks, within a really short period of time, and we're talking a huge organization, started to employ people that were new to a country, you know, for whatever reasons, economic or political, immigrants into a country. And let's give them the skills, let's give them a job, because often these people are, more often, they're hardworking, they're conscientious, they want to make a difference. And of course, they're paying tax into, a local or national economy. So, well done. Shout out to Starbucks on that one. But I know
100%.
there's lots of different things going off. And the ex-offenders, the people that come out of our prison system, that is supposedly there to rehabilitate. It's not just to punish. It's not to punish. It's to rehabilitate that person and get them back into society. And I think it's Timpson's, isn't it?
Timpson's, yeah. James Timpson, we work with them closely on this. And
oh, really?
It's the most rewarding thing in the world. Seeing someone who's, like I said earlier on, they've made an error of judgment. And, if we go back through our lives, there are probably sliding doors moments where, there by the grace of God, I took that route rather than that route. And, these people have made, most of them have made an error of judgment. And then that's going to ruin the rest of their lives. It's wrong. And I look at, the kind of the immigrant situation, the career switchers, the returners, all of these things. I simplify talent acquisition to de-risking a decision. Can this person come into our organization and bring something to the party and deliver a good job? That's the main thing. And these people have got so many different skills that probably wouldn't sit on a traditional CV. You talked about parents, women and men that have had kids and come back. Some of those parents, when I see them come back into the organisation, are the best negotiators they've ever been, because they've had to negotiate with a 3-month-old to take their food or tidy their room or stop crying or give me 5 minutes.
Yeah,
they're amazing. And we've got to get better at looking at the inherent skills and the transferable skills than just what's on a CV.
Yeah. Absolutely. Love that. Really love that. Championing that cause, but both of us. And on that subject, I mean, we mentioned there are several businesses that are doing good things. Is there anyone in our industry that you see doing other great things that you want to give a shout out in this interview?
Yeah, I would. I think it's two people. It's a guy by the name of Damien Stork and his partner Jonathan Hook. They are amazing, and they're the ones that are championing this biological need around humans and leadership and looking after yourself, being able to then look after your teams. They champion a lot of the science-based things for leadership. Right. But they also, when you do their programs and things like that, they took us for a walk in the Cotswolds. It was a 10-mile hike. It was chucking it down. It was crazy, but we learned so much from that. I'm not naming names, but we heard from people in our team that have got real challenges going on that you would never have known because they just put the mask on at work, and they've been looking after an ill parent 2 minutes before going on to a board meeting. And you're like, how do you do that? So by using science to be able to unlock that and create a leadership and a culture within an organization that enables people to feel free to talk, the psychological safety, along with the external piece, that getting out inside in the sunshine and the walk. I've had people, because we've rolled it out here, because I went on one of the programs and it transformed me. Yeah. I lost my mum suddenly about 7 years ago, really suddenly. And I don't think I grieved over it properly because I went into work mode. Yeah. I was the eldest sibling, I'm like, we'll organize this, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. Exactly. And that's what we do in work. Yeah. So by being able to kind of talk about it, I think we had our entire team in tears at one point, but the camaraderie that we've got, nearly every team meeting that we have now starts off with, how are you feeling? And that transforms people's lives. I've got people joining gyms, I've got people going out for walks in an evening with their family, and they say, you know what, it's not just made me a better leader, it's made me a better wife, better husband, better father, better mother, because you're just reconnecting with the simple things. And Damien and Jonathan, they run this CHX, and my God, does it transform lives, genuinely transform lives.
I love that. And I'm certainly going to look out for their work. For the people that are watching or listening to this, we're going to put a link to Jonathan and David's work.
Damien.
Damien, yes.
Damien Stork and Jonathan Hook.
Fantastic. We'll put a link below for people interested in their work and connecting with them and everything else. So thank you for sharing that, Ian. And look, it brings, unfortunately, time is always going to be our biggest enemy on these things. So we're coming to the end. Ian, how can people that are watching, are listening to this episode, connect with you, reach out to you, etc.? I know you're interested in expanding networks and talking to other people. How can people do that with you?
The obvious and easy one is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and like I say, I can't sit here and talk about curiosity if I don't want to be curious about what other people are doing and what have you. So I'll drink my own champagne on that. So definitely I'd love to hear from people via LinkedIn. Nice. Equally, I've got an email address, which is ianturner1644@gmail.com. So drop me an email if you like, or LinkedIn. Those are the easiest ways, probably.
Fantastic. And Ian, again, we'll put those links down in the show notes for this, wherever people are, listening on a podcast or watching the video. Ian, really sadly, we've come to the end of our time together. I just wanted to personally thank you for sharing your experiences, sharing your insights, and a couple of, so many knowledge bombs. It's like I'm writing notes, and I'm desperate to listen to this episode again, just to get some of the things, or refresh my mind on some of the things you've said. So on behalf of HR Live Lounge and all of our viewers, all of our listeners, thank you.
No, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good.
Thank you for listening to the HR Live Lounge podcast with your host, Roy Ripper. Be sure to visit royripper.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content.